After seeing the same stray Labrador hanging around the park for 5 days in a row, Daisy decided she wanted to help him. She figured the best way to earn his trust was with food and toys, and luckily that seemed to work just fine. But one day, while she was gently petting him, she felt something around his neck. Was it a collar? Daisy quickly turned it to check for any info, and what she saw left her speechless. There was something unusual on the dog's tag. She glanced at her husband, and in that moment they both understood. They had to act. After spotting a stray Labrador wandering the park alone, Daisy and a few of her neighbors began bringing him food. He looked like a big, healthy male with thick fur and kind eyes, and he always seemed thankful for the meals. Still, something didn't add up. The dog clearly hadn't been on the streets for long, but no one in the area recognized him. He stayed close to the park, rarely straying far, especially once people started showing up with food and fresh water. Daisy and the others hoped to slowly build the dog's trust and eventually figure out where he belonged. But deep down, Daisy worried the dog might have come from a home where he wasn't treated right. She was used to seeing dogs that were lively and full of joy. This one was different. He didn't trust people at all. Even when offered food, he wouldn't touch it unless the person stepped far enough away. After 3 days with no one stepping forward to claim him, the neighbors decided they needed to do something. Daisy's first step was calling animal services. But when they explained the dog would be taken to a shelter and possibly put down if not adopted within 5 days. Daisy instantly regretted the call. She hung up without giving them the dog's location. She realized then she'd have to figure something out herself. Even when the other neighbors stopped showing up, Daisy kept going back to the park. She brought food, checked on the dog, and quietly sat nearby. She started to look forward to those moments, and little by little, the dog seemed to feel safer with her around. Eventually, Daisy started thinking that maybe a shelter wasn't the only option. She'd never planned on getting a pet, but after talking it over with her husband, they agreed. They wanted to adopt him. The idea of giving him a home felt right, and both of them were excited. But first, they had to catch him. So Daisy and her husband John went out and picked up some wet dog food, toys, and a bag of treats they hoped he'd like. When they returned to the park, the dog was there, lounging by the picnic tables like usual. Daisy showed him what they'd brought. She was amazed by his reaction. The dog looked truly happy to see her and clearly interested in what she had. They had brought everything they thought the dog would like, but what really surprised Daisy was that this time the dog came toward her without needing to be called. She felt a wave of hope. The tired-looking Labrador slowly approaching made her believe they might actually be able to bring him home without much trouble. Still, Daisy knew she couldn't rush things. She had to keep doing what had been working. As usual, Daisy placed the food down near him and stepped back to give him space. But today she chose to stay closer. The dog clearly wasn't happy that she hadn't moved away like usual. He stood still, unsure. But when Daisy called to him gently, he slowly started moving forward, just a few steps at a time. He was too hungry to resist, even though he still looked uneasy. Eventually, he reached the food and began to eat. And then something different happened. He didn't leave right away. Seeing this, Daisy carefully reached out and petted him. That's when she realized he was wearing a collar. She hadn't noticed it before because of his thick fur. Right away, her heart sank. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe the dog already had a family waiting for him somewhere, and she wouldn't get to adopt him after all. Before he got spooked and pulled away, Daisy gently turned the collar to check the tag. She expected to see a phone number or maybe a vet's name, but instead, she saw something strange. A username and a password. That was it. No name, no website, no clear clue what it meant. She kept reading and then spotted a third line. As soon as she saw it, she gasped. She picked up the dog and called John over. She showed him the string of numbers written on the tag. They both looked at it and agreed. It looked like coordinates. Maybe they pointed to the dog's home? But that still didn't explain why there was a username and password on the tag, too. John typed the coordinates into his phone, and it pulled up an address. They didn't want to jump to conclusions, but they agreed it was best to check it out. So they loaded the dog into the car and started driving. On the ride over, Daisy and John didn't say much. They'd grown really attached to the dog. They truly hoped to keep him, but if he belonged to someone, they knew they had to do the right thing. The dog lay quietly in the back seat the whole time, but as they got closer to the location, he started to perk up. His tail wagged a little, and he looked out the window like he recognized where they were. They drove into a rougher part of town, industrial-looking, with almost no trees and a bunch of rundown buildings. It didn't feel like a place where a dog should be. Daisy and John exchanged a look. Something felt off. Eventually, they reached the spot. The house looked old and neglected, but they parked out front. John thought it would be better if he went up alone, so Daisy stayed in the car with the dog. He knocked on the door, but no one answered. Then he stepped over to one of the windows to peek inside. A second later, he turned around and shouted something to Daisy. She couldn't hear him, so she rolled down her window. But that's exactly what the dog had been waiting for. As soon as it was open, he leapt from the back seat, scrambled across Daisy's lap, and jumped right out the window. He bolted straight toward the house. John saw him coming, but couldn't stop him in time. The dog dashed around to the side and slipped inside through a broken window. By now, Daisy had run over to join John at the house. They couldn't hear anything except the dog barking. They started calling out, asking if anyone was there, but no one answered. Daisy decided to check around the back of the house. She didn't find any people, but she did notice something important. There was a back door, and it was slightly open. Daisy paused at the open door. She didn't feel right walking into a stranger's house, but making sure the dog was okay mattered more to her than anything. She called John over, and together they stepped inside. Right away, they noticed the house hadn't been lived in for a long time. The whole bottom floor was empty. No furniture, no signs of anyone living there. They followed the sound of barking upstairs. The noise led them to a bedroom. Inside, they found the Labrador lying on an old bed. But he wasn't alone. Lying next to him, tucked under some thin blankets, was an elderly man, pale and frail, gently petting the dog. At first, the man didn't even look up. He seemed weak, his breathing was slow, and his body barely moved. After a minute or so, he finally noticed Daisy and John standing near the door. He looked scared, unsure of who they were or why they were there. But when he saw how excited the dog was to see them, he relaxed. Slowly, they started to talk. The man's voice was soft, and he paused often between sentences. But little by little, he shared his story. He said he'd been living in that house for years. Apparently, the previous owners had left it behind, and no one wanted to buy it because of how badly it had fallen apart. He explained that the dog's name was Jacko. He had once belonged to the family who used to live there, but when they moved, they left Jacko behind. The man had been homeless for a long time. One night, he came across the house and decided to take shelter there. That's when he found Jacko, also alone, waiting. The collar Jacko wore was the same one his old owners had given him. Over time, the man and the dog had become inseparable. But recently, his health had taken a turn for the worse. He didn't think he had much time left. Knowing he might not be able to care for Jacko much longer, he had made a heartbreaking choice. He let Jacko go, hoping that someone kind would find him and give him a better life. Leaving him at the park was the hardest thing he'd ever done. He told Daisy and John that his final wish was for them to adopt Jacko and take care of him the way he no longer could. He was deeply thankful that they'd brought Jacko back one last time so he could say goodbye. As you can imagine, Daisy and John were overwhelmed. They offered to take the man to a hospital, but he quietly refused. He said he was ready to go and wanted to spend his final days in peace, alone. It broke their hearts to leave him behind, but they promised, with everything they had, that they would take care of Jacko. The man's eyes lit up when he heard that. In that moment, they knew they were doing the right thing. Did you expect that kind of ending? Let us know what you think in the comments below. It's amazing how every stray dog carries a story, and sadly, many of them are never told. But at least Jacko's story had a hopeful ending. Before you go, make sure to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more incredible stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.